They told Angel Matthews her father had 72 hours to live unless she agreed to the deal. Not a loan, not a favor, a marriage, to a man who couldn't even open his eyes. Paolo Bianchi, heir to one of the most dangerous crime families in the city, had been trapped in a coma for months, and his family needed a bride to secure his inheritance. Angel had no choice. She signed the contract in a room that smelled like expensive cigars and desperation, trading her freedom for her father's survival. What she didn't know was that some deals don't end when the ink dries. They only begin. If you want to see how this story unfolds, stick with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Angel Matthews had always believed that hospitals were places where people fought for their lives. She'd spent 3 years as a nurse watching patients cling to hope, watching families make impossible decisions, watching the line between living and dying blur into something gray and uncertain. But she never imagined she'd be the one making a deal with death. The call came on a Tuesday. Her father, Robert Matthews, had collapsed at work. A heart attack, sudden and brutal. By the time the ambulance arrived, his heart had stopped twice. They'd revived him, but the damage was severe. He needed surgery, the kind that cost more than Angel made in 2 years, and their insurance had lapsed 3 months ago when he'd lost his job. Angel sat in the ICU waiting room, her scrubs still on from her shift, her hands shaking as she filled out paperwork she couldn't afford. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, cold and indifferent. A doctor she didn't recognize approached her, his expression carefully neutral. "Miss Matthews?" She looked up. "Yes?" "There's someone here to see you. He says it's urgent." Angel frowned. "Who?" He didn't give his name, but he's waiting in the consultation room. Something about the doctor's tone made her stomach tighten. She followed him down the hallway, past rooms filled with beeping machines and quiet suffering, until they reached a small conference room at the end of the corridor. The doctor opened the door and gestured for her to enter. The man inside was not what she expected. He was older, maybe 60, with silver hair combed back and a suit that probably cost more than her car. His eyes were sharp, calculating, the kind of eyes that missed nothing. He stood when she entered, offering a polite smile that didn't reach those eyes. "Miss Matthews, thank you for meeting with me." "I didn't agree to meet with anyone," Angel said, her voice tight. "Who are you?" "My name is Vincent Caruso. I'm an attorney representing the Bianchi family." The name hit her like a punch. Everyone in the city knew the Bianchi family. They owned half the real estate downtown, had their hands in construction, shipping, and a dozen other industries that operated just on the edge of legality. They were old money, old power, and old secrets. "I don't know anyone named Bianchi," Angel said carefully. "No, but we know you." Vincent gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit. This won't take long." Angel didn't move. "I'm not interested in whatever you're selling." "I'm not selling anything, Miss Matthews. I'm offering you a solution." "To what?" "Your father's medical bills." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and dangerous. Angel's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "How do you know about my father?" "The Bianca family has interests in this hospital. We were made aware of your situation." Vincent opened a leather briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Your father needs immediate surgery. The estimated cost is $340,000. You have no insurance, no savings, and no way to secure a loan with your current income." Angel felt her face flush with anger and humiliation. "That's none of your business." "You're right. It's not." Vincent slid the folder across the table toward her. "But I'm here to make it our business." "Why?" "Because the Bianca family needs something from you. And in exchange, we're prepared to cover all of your father's medical expenses, surgery, recovery, rehabilitation, everything." Angel stared at the folder like it might explode. "What could you possibly need from me?" "A wife." The word landed like a grenade. Angel laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "You're insane." "I assure you, I'm quite sane." Vincent's expression didn't change. "The situation is unusual, I'll admit, but the offer is genuine." "You want me to marry someone in your family?" "Yes." "Who?" "Paolo Bianchi. He's 28 years old, the only son of Marcus Bianchi, and the primary heir to the family estate." Angel shook her head. "I don't care who he is. I'm not marrying a stranger." "You won't be strangers for long," Vincent said calmly. "You'll be living in the same house."
No. Miss Matthews, no. Angel turned toward the door. This is insane.
My father would never want me to do something like this. Your father will be dead in 72 hours without that surgery. Angel froze, her hand on the doorknob. Vincent continued, his voice soft but relentless. I've reviewed his charts. I've spoken with his doctors. Without intervention, he'll experience another cardiac event within 3 days, and this time, he won't survive it. Angel closed her eyes, her throat tight. Why me? Because you're a nurse, because you're capable, and because Paolo Bianchi has been in a coma for the past 6 months. The room tilted. Angel turned slowly, her heart pounding. What? He was in a car accident. The doctors have stabilized him, but he hasn't regained consciousness. He requires round-the-clock care, and the family has decided that a formal arrangement would be beneficial for all parties involved. You want me to marry someone in a coma? Yes. That's... Angel couldn't find the words. That's sick. That's business. Vincent opened the folder and pulled out a stack of papers. The marriage would be legally binding. You would move into the Bianchi estate and provide medical care for Paolo. In exchange, your father receives the surgery he needs, and you receive a monthly stipend of $10,000 for as long as the arrangement continues. $10,000. Angel's annual salary was barely $40,000. And if he wakes up? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The contract includes provisions for that scenario. You would remain married for a minimum of 1 year from the date of his recovery. After that, you're free to file for divorce. And if he doesn't wake up? Then the arrangement continues indefinitely, or until his death, at which point you would receive a settlement of $5 million. Angel felt sick. You're asking me to hope he dies. I'm asking you to make a choice. Vincent stood and straightened his suit. Your father's surgery is scheduled for Thursday morning. It's currently Tuesday evening. If you sign the contract by midnight tomorrow, we'll cover all expenses and ensure he receives the best care available. If you don't, he let the sentence hang. This is blackmail. This is opportunity. Vincent placed a business card on the table. Think about it. Call me when you've decided. He left without another word. Angel stood alone in the consultation room, staring at the folder on the table. Her hands were shaking. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. She thought about her father, lying in the ICU with tubes and wires keeping him alive. She thought about the years he'd worked 2 jobs to pay for her nursing school, the nights he'd stayed up helping her study, the quiet pride in his eyes when she'd graduated. She thought about the kind of man who would arrange a marriage to someone in a coma, and she thought about the fact that she didn't have a choice. Angel didn't sleep that night. She sat in her father's hospital room, listening to the steady beep of his heart monitor, watching his chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. His face was pale, his eyes closed, his hands folded across his stomach. He looked smaller than she remembered, fragile in a way that terrified her. I don't know what to do, Dad, she whispered. He didn't answer. He hadn't been conscious since the heart attack. Angel pulled Vincent's business card from her pocket and stared at it until the letters blurred. She thought about calling her aunt in Philadelphia, but her aunt was barely scraping by herself. She thought about taking out a loan, but no bank would touch her with her credit score. She thought about starting a fundraiser, but $300,000 in 2 days was impossible. At 11:47 p.m. on Wednesday night, she called Vincent Caruso. Miss Matthews? He answered on the first ring. Have you made your decision? Yes. And? Angel closed her eyes. I'll do it. Excellent. I'll have the paperwork ready within the hour. Can you meet me at the hospital? Now? The sooner we finalize this, the sooner your father gets his surgery. Angel looked at her father's sleeping face one more time. Okay. Good. I'll see you shortly. The line went dead. The contract was 43 pages long. Angel sat in the same consultation room where this nightmare had started, a pen in her hand and Vincent Caruso across the table. A notary public stood in the corner, silent and professional, waiting to make this madness official. You don't have to read every word, Vincent said, though his tone suggested he didn't care either way. The key points are outlined on page 3. Angel ignored him and read anyway. The The language was dense, filled with legal jargon that made her head ache, but the meaning was clear enough. She would marry Paolo Bianchi in a private ceremony within 72 hours. She would move into the Bianchi estate and provide medical care for him as needed. She would present herself as his wife in all public and family matters. She would not discuss the arrangement with anyone outside the family. She would not pursue romantic or sexual relationships with anyone else for the duration of the marriage. In exchange, her father would receive full medical care, and she would receive $10,000 per month, deposited directly into an account that Vincent's firm would establish in her name. The contract also included a clause about Paolo's potential recovery. If he woke up, she would remain married to him for a minimum of 1 year. If she attempted to leave before that year was up, she would forfeit all financial support and be required to repay any money already received. It was a cage dressed up as a contract. "What happens if I refuse after I sign?" Angel asked. "You won't. But if I do..." Vincent leaned back in his chair. "Then your father's surgery will be canceled, his medical bills will be sent to collections, and you'll spend the next decade trying to dig yourself out of debt. The Bianchi family doesn't appreciate broken agreements, Miss Matthews. I'd advise you not to test that." Angel set the pen down. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." She wanted to throw the contract in his face. She wanted to walk out of the room and find another way, any other way. But when she closed her eyes, all she saw was her father's pale face and the flat line that would come if she didn't sign. So she signed. Her hand moved across the pages, one signature after another, binding herself to a man she'd never met, a family she didn't know, and a life she couldn't imagine. When she finished, Vincent collected the pages, checked each signature with methodical precision, and nodded to the notary. "Congratulations, Miss Matthews," Vincent said, sliding a copy of the contract across the table. "You're getting married, Opta." The Bianchi estate sat on the outskirts of the city, hidden behind iron gates and walls covered in ivy. Angel arrived in a black town car at 7 in the morning, 2 suitcases in the trunk, and her nursing license in her purse. The driver didn't speak to her during the 30-minute drive, and she didn't try to make conversation. The house, no, the mansion, was enormous. 3 stories of stone and glass that seemed to belong in a European countryside rather than the edge of an American city. The driveway curved through manicured gardens, past fountains and hedges trimmed into perfect shapes. It was beautiful in a cold, untouchable way. The car stopped in front of the main entrance. The driver opened her door without a word. "Thank you," Angel said, though she wasn't sure why. He nodded once and retrieved her suitcases. The front door opened before she reached it. A woman in her 50s stood in the doorway, her expression stern but not unkind. She wore a simple black dress and sensible shoes, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Miss Matthews," the woman said, "I'm Helen, the head housekeeper. Mr. Caruso informed us of your arrival." "Just Angel is fine." Helen's expression didn't change. "Mr. Bianchi is in the East Wing. I'll show you to your room first so you can settle in." "I'd like to see him." "You will, but first you'll need to understand the household rules." Angel followed Helen inside, her footsteps echoing on marble floors. The interior of the mansion was just as cold as the exterior. High ceilings, expensive art on the walls, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything was pristine, untouched, lifeless. Helen led her up a grand staircase and down a long hallway. "The family wing is on the 2nd floor. You'll have a suite adjacent to Mr. Paolo's room. The staff quarters are on the 3rd floor. Meals are served in the dining room at 8, 1, and 7. If you require anything outside those hours, you may use the kitchen, but please inform cook in advance." "Okay." Helen stopped in front of a door and opened it. "This is your room." The suite was larger than Angel's entire apartment. A king-sized bed dominated the center, flanked by nightstands with crystal lamps. There was a sitting area with a couch and a fireplace, a walk-in closet, and a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. The walls were painted a soft cream, and the windows overlooked the gardens. It was beautiful. It was suffocating. "Mr. Paolo's room is through that door," Helen said, pointing to a connecting door on the far wall. "He has a full-time physician who visits twice a week, but you'll be responsible for his daily care. His medical equipment and records are in his room." "When can I see him?" Helen's expression softened slightly. "Now, if you'd like." Angel nodded. Helen opened the connecting door. The room beyond was dim, the curtains drawn to block out the morning light. Medical equipment lined the walls, monitors, IV stands, a ventilator that wasn't currently in use. And in the center of it all, lying in a hospital bed that looked absurdly out of place among the expensive furniture, was Paolo Bianchi. Angel's breath caught. He was younger than she'd expected, his face unlined despite the months of unconsciousness. Dark hair, olive skin, strong features that would have been handsome if they weren't so still. He wore a simple white t-shirt, and his arms rested at his sides, palms up, fingers slightly curled. An IV line ran into his left hand. Electrodes were attached to his chest, feeding data to the monitors beside the bed. He looked like he was sleeping. Just sleeping. He's stable, Helen said quietly. He breathes on his own, and his vitals are strong. The doctors say there's no reason he shouldn't wake up, but he hasn't. Angel stepped closer, her nurse's instincts taking over. She checked the monitors, heart rate steady, blood pressure normal, oxygen saturation at 98%. His muscle tone was good, which meant someone had been doing regular physical therapy. His skin was healthy, no bed sores. "Who's been taking care of him?" Angel asked. "We've had a rotation of private nurses, but the family wanted someone more permanent, someone they could control," Angel thought. She reached out and touched Paolo's hand. His skin was warm, his pulse strong beneath her fingers. For a moment she imagined what it would be like if he woke up right then, what he would think, what he would say, how he would react to finding a stranger holding his hand and claiming to be his wife. "I'll leave you to get acquainted," Helen said. "If you need anything, there's a call button by the bed." Angel barely heard her leave. She stood there holding the hand of the man she'd married and wondered what kind of person made a deal like this. What kind of family forced a woman into marriage with someone who couldn't even consent to it? And what kind of man Paolo Bianchi would turn out to be if he ever opened his eyes? The wedding had taken place the day before, in a courthouse with Vincent Caruso and a judge who asked no questions. Angel had worn the same jeans and sweater she'd been wearing when she signed the contract. There were no flowers, no music, no guests, just a vow she didn't mean and a signature that bound her anyway. Now she was living in the mansion, sleeping in a room next to a man she'd never spoken to, and the weight of what she'd done was starting to settle in her chest like a stone. The first week passed in a blur. Angel fell into a routine. She woke at 6, checked Paolo's vitals, administered his medications, and performed the physical therapy exercises the previous nurses had left notes about. She talked to him while she worked, narrating her actions like she did with patients at the hospital, even though she knew he couldn't hear her. "Good morning, Paolo. I'm going to check your blood pressure now. This might feel a little tight." Silence. "Your heart rate looks good today. Better than mine, honestly." Silence. "I made your father very rich by marrying you. Did you know that? I'm sure that's thrilling for you." Silence. It felt ridiculous talking to someone who couldn't respond, but it also felt necessary, like if she stopped talking, she'd forget how to be human. The Bianchi family was a small, tense group. Paolo's father, Marcus, was a man in his 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that could cut glass. He barely acknowledged Angel's existence, speaking to her only when necessary and treating her like hired help rather than his daughter-in-law. Paolo's aunt, Lorraine, was warmer but distant, offering polite smiles that never reached her eyes. She was married to a man named Richard, who seemed more interested in the estate's wine cellar than anything else. And then there was Dante. Paolo's cousin, Dante Bianchi, was 32 and everything Angel imagined when she thought of the Mafia. He was handsome in a dangerous way, with dark eyes that lingered too long and a smile that promised trouble. He watched her like a hawk, his presence a constant reminder that she didn't belong here. "So, you're the nurse," Dante said one evening, cornering her in the hallway outside Paolo's room. "Yes. Must be nice getting paid to play house?" Angel bristled. "I'm taking care of your cousin." "Sure you are." Dante stepped closer, invading her space. "Tell me, Angel, what happens if Paolo never wakes up? You just keep cashing those checks?" "That's none of your business. Everything in this family is my business." His smile was sharp, especially when it involves Paolo's inheritance. Angel pushed past him, her heart pounding. She didn't look back. Dad.
3 weeks into her new life, something changed. Angel was reading aloud from a novel she'd found in the library, a mystery about a detective chasing a killer through the streets of Boston. She didn't know if Paolo liked mysteries, but it was better than silence. She was halfway through a chapter when she felt it, a twitch. Paolo's hand, lying still in hers, moved. Just a fraction, barely noticeable, but enough to make her stop mid-sentence. Angel stared at his hand, her pulse racing.
Paolo? Nothing. She waited, counting her breaths, watching for any sign of movement, and then it happened again. His fingers curled slightly, like he was trying to grasp something. Paolo, can you hear me? His eyelids fluttered. Angel shot to her feet, her chair scraping against the floor. Paolo, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. For a long, agonizing moment, nothing happened, and then his fingers tightened around hers. Angel's breath caught. She hit the call button beside the bed, her hands shaking. Helen, I need the doctor now. She turned back to Paolo, leaning over him, her voice urgent. Paolo, it's okay. You're safe. Just stay with me, okay? Stay with me. His eyes opened, just a crack at first, his lashes dark against his pale skin, and then wider, unfocused and confused, blinking against the dim light. He looked at her, and Angel realized with a sinking feeling in her stomach that she had no idea what to say to the man she'd married while he slept. The doctor arrived within minutes, a thin man named Dr. Patel, who'd been treating Paolo since the accident. He ran through a series of tests, checking Paolo's pupils, testing his reflexes, asking him simple questions. Do you know where you are? Paolo's voice was rough from disuse. Home. Do you know what happened to you? A pause. Car accident. Do you remember anything after that? No. Dr. Patel nodded, making notes on his tablet. That's normal. You've been unconscious for 6 months. Your memory of the accident and the immediate aftermath may never fully return. 6 months. Angel watched Paolo's face as the information sank in. His expression didn't change, but his hands clenched into fists beneath the blanket. You're going to need physical therapy, Dr. Patel continued. Your muscles have atrophied despite our best efforts, but overall, your recovery is remarkable. I'll want to run more tests tomorrow, but for now, you should rest. Who are you? Paolo's eyes shifted to Angel. Her throat tightened. I'm Angel. She's your wife, Dr. Patel said, completely oblivious to the bomb he'd just dropped. Paolo's gaze sharpened. What? Angel wanted to disappear. It's complicated. Get out. Paolo, get out of my room. Dr. Patel cleared his throat. Mr. Bianche, I understand you're disoriented, but Miss Matthews has been your primary caregiver for... I don't care. Paolo's voice was cold, lethal. Get her out. Angel didn't wait for Dr. Patel to argue. She turned and walked out of the room, her face burning with humiliation and something that felt dangerously close to fear. Behind her, she heard Paolo's voice, low and furious. Someone better start explaining what the hell is going on. Angel stood in the hallway outside Paolo's room, her back pressed against the wall, trying to remember how to breathe. Through the heavy door, she could hear voices, Dr. Patel's measured tone, Paolo's sharp demands, and then Marcus Bianca's deep rumble as he arrived to handle the situation his family had created. She should leave, walk down the hall, pack her bags, and disappear before this got worse. But her feet wouldn't move, and somewhere in the chaos of her thoughts, she remembered the contract. 43 pages of legal binding that said she couldn't leave, couldn't run, couldn't do anything but stand here and wait for the explosion. The door opened. Marcus emerged first, his face carved from stone. He barely glanced at her. Wait in your room. Someone will come get you when he's ready. Wait in your room. It wasn't a suggestion. Angel retreated to her suite and closed the door. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped between her knees, and listened to the muffled sounds of argument filtering through the walls. She couldn't make out words, just the rise and fall of anger, and underneath it, something that sounded like betrayal. An hour passed, then 2. When the knock finally came, it was Helen's hand on the door. He wants to see you. Angel's stomach dropped. Now? Now. She followed Helen back through the connecting door. Paulo was sitting up in bed now, propped against pillows, his face pale but alert. Marcus stood by the window, arms crossed. Dr. Patel had left, and in his place was Vincent Caruso, the lawyer who'd orchestrated this whole disaster. Paulo's eyes locked on Angel the moment she entered. They were dark, almost black, and filled with something that made her want to run. "Sit," he said. There was a chair beside the bed. Angel sat. Paulo studied her for a long moment, his gaze moving from her face to her hands to the simple gold band on her left finger, the one Vincent had provided for the courthouse ceremony. She hadn't taken it off. "My father says you're a nurse." "Yes." "And you married me 6 months ago." "Yes." "While I was unconscious." Angel's throat was dry. "Yes." Paulo's jaw tightened. "Why?" She glanced at Marcus, then at Vincent. Neither of them moved to help her. "My father needed surgery," Angel said quietly. "I couldn't afford it. Your family offered to pay for it if I agreed to marry you and provide medical care. So you sold yourself." The words hit like a slap. "I saved my father's life. By signing a contract with people you didn't know, agreeing to marry someone who couldn't consent." Paulo's voice was cold, clinical. "That's not saving a life. That's making a deal with the devil." Angel's hands clenched in her lap. "I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Not when the alternative is watching your father die." Paulo leaned back against the pillows, his expression unreadable. "And what did you get out of this, besides the medical bills?" "A monthly stipend," Vincent interjected smoothly. $10,000 for the duration of the arrangement. So she's on the payroll." Paulo's eyes never left Angel's face. "How much have you collected so far?" $60,000, Vincent said. "Give it back." Angel's head snapped up. "What?" "Give it back, all of it." Paulo's voice was flat. "If this marriage is real, you don't need to be paid for it. If it's fake, I want you gone." "The contract stipulates," Vincent began. "I don't care what the contract says." Paulo's gaze shifted to his father. "You married me off like a piece of property. The least you can do is let me decide what happens next." Marcus's expression didn't change. "The arrangement serves a purpose." "Your purpose, not mine. You've been unconscious for 6 months. The family needed stability. The board needed assurance that the business wouldn't fall into chaos if something happened to you. So you found a stranger, paid her to play house, and called it a marriage." Paulo's laugh was bitter. "Very stable. It was necessary. It was convenient." Paulo turned back to Angel. "How old are you?" 24. "And you thought this was a good idea?" Angel's patience snapped. "I thought keeping my father alive was a good idea. I thought doing whatever it took to save him was a good idea. And if that makes me desperate or stupid or whatever you think I am, fine. But don't sit there and judge me when you have no idea what it's like to watch someone you love dying because you can't afford to save them." The room went silent. Paulo stared at her, something shifting in his expression. "Where's your father now?" "Recovering. He had the surgery 2 days after I signed the contract. He's in a rehabilitation facility in the city." "You've seen him?" 3 times. Your family has very specific rules about when I'm allowed to leave the estate." Paulo's gaze cut to Marcus. "Is that true?" "She has responsibilities here." "She's not a prisoner." "She's your wife," Marcus said, "and she has a contract to fulfill." "A contract I didn't agree to." Vincent cleared his throat. "With respect, mister. Bianche, the marriage is legally binding. Whether or not you were conscious at the time doesn't change the validity of the arrangement." "Then I'll divorce her." "The contract includes a clause requiring a minimum of 1 year from the date of your recovery before divorce proceedings can begin." Paulo's hands fisted in the blankets. "You're telling me I'm stuck in this for a year?" "At minimum." "And if I refuse?" "Then Miss Matthews forfeits all financial support, including her father's ongoing medical care." Vincent's tone was infuriatingly calm. "The rehabilitation facility costs approximately $15,000 per month. I believe her father is scheduled to remain there for at least 6 more months." Angel felt the trap closing around her again. She looked at Paulo and saw the same realization dawning in his eyes. "So if I end this," Paulo said slowly, "her father loses his care." "Correct. And if she leaves, same result." Paulo exhaled sharply, his head falling back against the pillows. For a moment, he looked exactly like what he was, a man who'd just woken up to find his life hijacked by people he should have been able to trust. "Everyone out," he said. Marcus frowned. "Paulo Uta, out, now." Vincent gathered his briefcase without argument. Marcus hesitated, then nodded once and followed the lawyer out. Helen slipped away like a ghost. Angel started to stand. "Not you!" She froze halfway out of the chair. "You said everyone." "You're not everyone. You're apparently my wife." Paulo's voice was heavy with sarcasm. "Sit down." Angel sat. They stared at each other in the dim room, the only sound the quiet beep of the heart monitor and the distant hum of the estate's ventilation system. "I don't remember the accident," Paulo said, finally. "I remember driving, I remember the rain, and then nothing until I woke up and saw you standing over me. Dr. Patel says that's normal. Nothing about this is normal." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Tell me what happened while I was out. Not the sanitized version my father gave me. The truth." Angel took a breath. "Your car went off the road 6 months ago. They said the brakes failed. You were in a coma when they brought you in. Traumatic brain injury, fractured ribs, collapsed lung. The doctors weren't sure you'd survive the first week." "But I did." "You did. And after a month, your family started making arrangements. I don't know all the details, but Vincent said something about the board of directors wanting assurance that the business would continue if you didn't wake up. A marriage would establish continuity, I think he called it." "Continuity," Paulo repeated. "That's a hell of a word for selling someone into marriage." "I wasn't sold. I made a choice. Under duress." Angel didn't argue. He wasn't wrong. "What have you been doing here?" Paulo asked, "besides the medical care?" "Not much. Taking care of you mostly. Physical therapy, medications, monitoring your vitals. I read to you sometimes, talked to you. The previous nurses left notes saying it might help." "Did it? You woke up, didn't you?" A ghost of a smile crossed Paulo's face, gone almost before it appeared. "Fair point." He shifted in the bed, wincing. "How bad is it, the muscle atrophy?" "Bad enough. You're going to need help walking at first. Your legs will feel like they don't belong to you for a while." "Great. It gets better. With work." Paulo was quiet for a moment. Then, "What's your father's name?" "Robert. Robert Matthews." "And he's doing okay? The surgery worked?" "Yes, he still has a long recovery ahead, but he's alive." "That's something, at least." Paulo's eyes drifted to the window, where afternoon light filtered through the curtains. "I can't believe they did this. My father, Vincent, all of them, just decided my life for me." "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For being part of it. I know you didn't ask for any of this." "Neither did you." Paulo looked at her again, his expression softer now. "Look, I'm angry, but not at you. You're just as trapped as I am." "I don't feel trapped." "Then you're lying to yourself." Maybe she was. Angel wasn't sure anymore. "What do you want to do?" she asked. Paulo laughed, sharp and humorless. "I want to burn the contract, divorce you tomorrow, and tell my family to go to hell. But apparently that's not an option. So we're stuck. For a year at least." He studied her. "Can you handle that?" "Can you?" "I don't have a choice, remember?" Angel almost smiled. "Welcome to the club." They sat in silence for a while. Not comfortable exactly, but not hostile either. Just two people caught in a situation neither of them wanted, trying to figure out how to survive it. Finally, Paulo said, "Ground rules. Okay? First, no more pretending this is a real marriage. We're roommates at best, business partners at worst." "Agreed." "Second, you don't owe me anything. You take care of yourself first. If my family gives you trouble, you come to me." "And you'll do what?" "I'll figure it out." Paulo's jaw set. "But you're not their employee. You're my wife, fake or not, and that means something in this family." Angel wasn't sure it meant anything at all, but she nodded anyway. "Third," Paulo continued, "we figure out what happened to my car." "What?" "The accident. Brakes don't just fail on a car that's serviced every month. Someone needs to look into it." "You think someone tampered with it?" I think this family has a lot of people who'd benefit from me being out of the picture. And now that I'm awake, I want to know who." A chill ran down Angel's spine. "Paulo, if someone tried to kill you, then they'll try again." His voice was calm, matter of fact. "Which means we need to be careful, both of us. I'm just a nurse. You're my wife. That makes you a target." Angel hadn't thought about it that way. She'd been so focused on surviving the contract, on taking care of her father, that she hadn't considered the danger she might actually be in. "Has anyone threatened you?" Paulo asked. "Not directly, but your cousin, Dante, he's been watching me, asking questions." Paulo's expression darkened. "Dante. You know him?" "He's my father's brother's son. He's been gunning for a bigger role in the family business for years. If I died, he would have been next in line." "So, he had motive." "He had motive." Paulo looked at her seriously. "Stay away from him. Don't talk to him unless someone else is around. And if he corners you, you tell me immediately." "Okay." "I'm serious, Angel. Dante's dangerous." "I believe you." Paulo exhaled slowly, his energy clearly flagging. Dr. Patel had warned that he'd tire easily for the first few weeks. "You should rest," Angel said. "I've been resting for 6 months. And you just woke up from a coma. Your body needs time to recover." "You sound like a nurse." "I am a nurse." "Right." Paulo's eyes drifted closed despite his protest. "Stay close tonight. I don't want anyone else in here." "I'll be in the next room if you need me." "No, I mean stay here, in this room." Angel hesitated. "Paulo, I don't trust anyone in this house except you, and I barely trust you." His eyes opened, fixing on her. "But you're the only one who didn't choose this. That counts for something." Angel thought about arguing, but the exhaustion in Paulo's face, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the blankets like he was holding on to something, it all reminded her of patients she'd seen before. People who'd woken up in unfamiliar places, surrounded by unfamiliar faces, trying to find one solid thing to hold on to. "Okay," she said, "I'll stay." "Thank you." She pulled the chair closer to the bed and settled in. Paulo's breathing evened out within minutes, his body finally surrendering to sleep. Angel watched him in the growing darkness. This stranger she'd married. This man who was now her responsibility and her ally in a game she didn't understand. She thought about Dante, about the car accident, about all the ways this could go wrong. And she thought about the fact that for the first time since she'd entered this house, she didn't feel completely alone. The days that followed were strange, tense, and nothing like Angel had imagined. Paulo refused to stay in bed. Against Dr. Patel's advice and Helen's protests, he insisted on getting up, on moving, on reclaiming the body that had betrayed him. Angel helped him at first, supporting his weight as he took shaky steps around the room, his legs trembling with the effort. "You're pushing too hard," she said on the third day, when he'd been on his feet for an hour straight. "I'm fine. You're exhausted." "I'm awake. There's a difference." Paulo gripped the edge of the dresser, his knuckles white. "If I stop moving, I'll never get back to normal. If you collapse, you'll set your recovery back weeks." "Then don't let me collapse." Angel wanted to argue, but there was a stubbornness in Paulo's expression that reminded her of her father, the same refusal to admit weakness, the same determination to push through pain. So she stayed close, ready to catch him if he fell, and tried not to think about how her hands had started to memorize the shape of his shoulders, the tension in his spine. The rest of the family kept their distance. Marcus appeared once a day to check on Paulo's progress, his visits brief and devoid of warmth. Lorraine brought flowers and meaningless pleasantries. Richard avoided the East Wing entirely. Dante, however, was a constant presence. He'd show up unannounced, leaning in the doorway with that sharp smile, asking questions disguised as concern. "Heard you're up and walking, cousin. That's quite the recovery." "Thanks for the concern," Paulo said, not bothering to hide his sarcasm. "Just making sure you're getting the care you need." Dante's eyes slid to Angel. "Our little nurse has been busy, I see." "She has a name," Paulo said. "Angel." "Right." Dante's smile widened. "Must be nice having someone so dedicated to your recovery." Paulo crossed the room slowly, each step deliberate despite the effort it took.
He stopped directly in front of Dante, meeting his gaze. If you have something to say, say it. Just wondering how long you plan to keep up this charade. What charade? The marriage. Everyone knows it's fake. Then everyone can mind their own business. Dante's expression hardened. This is family business. That makes it my business. No, Paolo said quietly. It doesn't. They stared at each other, the air thick with unspoken threats. Finally, Dante stepped back. Welcome back, cousin. Let's hope you stay that way. He left without another word. Angel released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. He really doesn't like you. The feeling's mutual. Paolo returned to the bed, his legs shaking now. He sat heavily, frustration radiating off him. Dante's been circling the business like a vulture for years.
My accident gave him hope. My recovery just took it away. Do you think he had something to do with it, the accident? I think he had motive. Whether he had opportunity, that's what we need to find out. We? Paolo looked at her. You're in this now, Angel, like it or not. She supposed she was. That night, after Paolo had finally surrendered to sleep, Angel returned to her room and called her father's rehabilitation facility. The nurse on duty assured her that Robert was doing well, that his physical therapy was progressing ahead of schedule. He asks about you every day, the nurse said. Wants to know when you're coming to visit. Soon, Angel promised, though she didn't know if that was true. After she hung up, she sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the connecting door between her room and Paolo's. She could hear him moving restlessly on the other side, the creak of the hospital bed, the rustle of sheets. She thought about Vincent's words. 1 year from the date of your recovery. She thought about Dante's smile and Marcus's cold indifference, and the contract that bound her to a man who was still, in many ways, a stranger. And she thought about the fact that somewhere in this mess, she'd started to care what happened to Paolo Bianchi. Not because she had to, not because of the contract or the money or her father's care, but because when he looked at her, he saw a person, not a transaction. And in this house full of people playing roles, that was rare enough to matter. 2 weeks after waking up, Paolo was walking without assistance. He still tired easily, still had moments where his body didn't respond the way he wanted it to, but the improvement was undeniable. Dr. Patel was thrilled. Remarkable progress, Mr. Bianchi. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I have a good nurse, Paolo said, glancing at Angel. She felt her face warm and hated herself for it. After Dr. Patel left, Paolo pulled a folder from the drawer beside his bed. I need you to do something for me. What? There's a mechanic in the city. His name is Tommy Ricci. He used to work on all the family cars. Paolo handed her a slip of paper with an address. I need you to go see him. Ask him about my accident. Don't tell anyone you're going. Angel stared at the address. Paolo, I can't just leave. My family thinks you're going to visit your father. Helen already approved it. You'll have a car and a driver. And the driver will report everywhere I go. Not if you're smart about it. Paolo pulled out a phone. Not his usual one, Angel noticed, but a cheap burner. Use this. Don't take your regular phone. And when you get to the rehab facility, ask them to call you a cab to this address. The driver won't follow you inside. You're asking me to lie to your family. I'm asking you to help me figure out who tried to kill me. Paolo's voice was steady. If we're right, if someone sabotaged my car, they're still out there, and they might try again. I need to know what Tommy found when he looked at the wreckage. Angel took the phone. What if he won't talk to me? Tell him I sent you. He'll talk. Paolo hesitated. And Angel, be careful. If someone realizes what you're doing, I know. I'll be careful. The next morning, Angel climbed into the back of the town car with her heart pounding in her chest. The driver, a silent man named James, pulled away from the estate without a word. She visited her father first, spending an hour sitting beside his bed while he told her about his progress in physical therapy, his new friends at the facility, his plans for when he finally got out. You look tired, sweetheart, Robert said. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, Dad. Just busy. This Bianca family treating you right? Angel forced a smile. They're fine. Robert didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. He never did. When she left the facility, she asked the front desk to call her a cab. The receptionist didn't even blink. 10 minutes later, Angel was in the back of a taxi, heading toward an address in a neighborhood she'd never been to before. Tommy Ricci's garage sat at the end of a dead-end street, squeezed between a laundromat and an abandoned warehouse. The sign above the door was faded, the paint peeling. Angel paid the driver and stepped out onto cracked pavement. The garage door was open, revealing a dim interior cluttered with tools, parts, and 2 cars in various states of disassembly. "Hello?" she called. A man emerged from beneath one of the cars, rolling out on a creeper. He was older, maybe 50, with grease-stained hands and suspicious eyes. "We're closed. I'm looking for Tommy Ricci." "You found him. What do you want?" "Paolo Bianchi sent me." Tommy's expression shifted from suspicion to something that looked like fear. He stood quickly, glancing past her toward the street. "Paolo's awake?" "Yes. He wants to know what you found when you examined his car." "I can't talk about that." "Why not?" Tommy wiped his hands on a rag, his movements jerky. "Look, lady, I don't know who you are, but if Paolo wants information, he can come ask me himself." "He can't. He's still recovering. I'm his wife." That stopped Tommy cold. "His wife?" "Yes." "Since when?" "6 months ago." Tommy stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Then he laughed, bitter and short. "So they actually did it. Marcus always said he'd find a way to lock down the inheritance." "What do you mean?" "Nothing. Forget it." Tommy turned back toward the car. "Tell Paolo I can't help him." "Can't or won't?" "Both." Angel stepped further into the garage. "Someone tried to kill him, didn't they? That's why you're scared." Tommy didn't answer, but his shoulders tensed. If you don't tell me what you found, whoever did this might try again," Angel pressed. "Is that what you want?" "What I want is to stay alive." Tommy spun around, his face hard. "You seem like a nice girl, so here's some free advice. Go back to that mansion, keep your head down, and don't ask questions you don't want answers to." "But the brake lines were cut, clean, professional, not an accident." Tommy's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I reported it to the family. Marcus told me to keep my mouth shut and forget I ever saw anything. So that's what I did. That's what I'm still doing." Angel's blood ran cold. "Marcus knows someone tried to kill Paolo?" "Marcus knows everything that happens in that family, including who benefits if Paolo dies." Tommy grabbed her arm, his grip tight. "Now get out of here before someone sees you talking to me. And tell Paolo to watch his back, because whoever tried once is going to try again." Angel left the garage with her hands shaking and her mind racing. She hailed another cab, returned to the rehab facility, and called James to pick her up. The drive back to the estate felt like it took hours. Angel stared out the window, Tommy's words echoing in her head. "The brake lines were cut. Marcus told me to keep my mouth shut. Whoever tried once is going to try again." When they finally pulled through the gates, Angel's stomach was in knots. She climbed out of the car, thanked James, and walked toward the house on legs that felt like rubber. Paolo was waiting in his room. He took one look at her face and closed the door. "What did you find out?" Angel told him everything. When she finished, Paolo's expression was carved from stone. "My father knew," he said quietly. "He knew someone tried to kill me, and he covered it up." "Why would he do that?" "Because the family comes first, always." Paolo's hands clenched into fist. "If it came out that someone in the family tried to murder the heir, it would destroy us. The business, the reputation, everything. So he buried it." "But that means the person who did it is still free, still here." "I know." They looked at each other in the dim light of the room, the weight of the truth settling between them like a stone. "What do we do now?" Angel asked. Paolo was quiet for a long moment. Then, "We figure out who did it, and we make sure they don't get another chance." The next 3 days passed in a strange kind of tension, like waiting for thunder after lightning. Paolo moved through the estate with a careful neutrality that Angel recognized from her time in the ICU, the way patients acted when they knew the next wrong move could kill them. He smiled at family dinners, made small talk with Marcus about business, and played the role of dutiful son recovering from a tragic accident. But in his room, behind closed doors, he was someone else entirely. "We need evidence," Paolo said on the 4th night, spreading papers across his bed. They were financial documents, business contracts,
Things he'd managed to pull from his father's study when the house was quiet. Something concrete that ties someone to the accident. Angel sat in the chair beside the bed, exhausted from another day of pretending everything was normal. How are we supposed to find that? It's not like there's a signed confession lying around. No, but there's money. Paulo tapped one of the documents. Someone paid to have my brake lines cut. Professional jobs like that don't come cheap. We find the payment. We find the person who authorized it. These are just business accounts. Legitimate transactions. Nothing in this family is completely legitimate. Paulo's finger traced down a column of numbers. See this? A wire transfer of $50,000 to a consulting firm I've never heard of, made 2 weeks before my accident. Angel leaned closer. What kind of consulting? That's what we need to find out. Paulo pulled out the burner phone and started typing. I have a contact who can run the company name. Someone outside the family who won't ask questions. Someone you trust? Trust is a strong word, but he owes me, and that's almost as good. Angel watched him work. This man who'd been unconscious for 6 months and had woken up to find his entire life rearranged. He should have been weak, should have been broken by everything that had happened. Instead, he was hunting the person who'd tried to kill him with a cold precision that was both impressive and slightly terrifying. What happens when we find out who did it? She asked. Paulo didn't look up from the phone. We make sure they can't do it again. Paulo, that sounds like justice. He met her eyes. Or revenge, depending on how you look at it. There's a difference, is there? Paulo set the phone down. Someone tried to murder me. My own family covered it up. If we go to the police, Marcus will bury the evidence and we'll both end up looking crazy. So we handle it ourselves. Handle it how? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. He rubbed his face, and for a moment Angel saw the exhaustion underneath the determination. I'm not asking you to be part of that. You've already done more than I had any right to expect. I'm already part of this, Angel said. The second I went to see Tommy, I became part of it. You could still walk away. No, I can't. We're stuck together for a year, remember? Your family made sure of that. Paulo smiled, tired but genuine. Yeah, they did. They worked until past midnight, sorting through documents, making lists of suspicious transactions, building a timeline of events leading up to the accident. By the time Angel finally retreated to her room, her eyes burned and her head ached. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the estate settling around her. Footsteps in the hallway, doors closing, the distant hum of the heating system. Normal sounds that felt anything but normal now that she knew what kind of danger they were in. Her phone buzzed. Not the burner, her regular phone. A text from an unknown number. Stop asking questions. Angel's heart slammed against her ribs. She sat up, staring at the screen. The message had no signature, no context, just those 3 words glowing in the darkness. She grabbed the burner phone and texted Paulo. He responded immediately. Come here, now. Angel slipped through the connecting door. Paulo was already out of bed, dressed in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his face hard. Show me. She handed him her phone. Paulo read the message twice, his jaw tightening with each word. When did this come in? 2 minutes ago. From a blocked number? Unknown. I don't recognize it. Paulo deleted the message and powered down her phone. Don't turn this back on. Use the burner for everything from now on. Paulo, someone knows what we're doing. I know. How? We've been careful. Not careful enough. Paulo moved to the window and looked out at the dark grounds. Someone's watching us. Or listening. Maybe both. Angel felt cold. You think the house is bugged? I think someone's paying very close attention to everything we do. He turned back to her. From now on, we don't talk about any of this inside the estate. We go for walks. We go into the city. We find places where we can't be overheard. Your family will notice if we suddenly start leaving together. Then we make it look normal. A recovering husband taking walks with his wife, physical therapy, bonding time. Whatever story they'll buy. Paulo's expression was grim. Because if they realize we're investigating, if they figure out we know about the brake lines, they'll move against us. And next time, I don't think it'll be subtle. Angel wrapped her arms around herself. I'm scared. Good. That means you're smart. Paulo crossed the room and stood in front of her. But being scared doesn't mean we stop. It means we're more careful. Can you do that? Angel thought about her father, about the contract, about the fact that she'd already come too far to turn back. Yes. Okay, then we keep going. They stood there in the quiet room, close enough that Angel could see the exhaustion in Paulo's eyes, the tension in his shoulders. Close enough that she could reach out and touch him if she wanted to. And for a moment she wanted to. Not because of any attraction or romance or stupid complication like that, but because he was the only solid thing in this entire nightmare, and she was tired of feeling like she was drowning. Get some sleep, Paulo said softly. Tomorrow we start being more careful. Angel nodded and returned to her room. But sleep didn't come easily, and when it did, it was full of break lines and blocked numbers and shadows watching from doorways. The next morning, Paulo announced at breakfast that he wanted to start taking daily walks around the estate grounds. Dr. Patel had recommended increased physical activity, he explained, and the fresh air would help with his recovery. Marcus barely looked up from his newspaper. Fine. Take Helen with you. Actually, I'd prefer Angel. She knows what to watch for if I start to tire. Helen is perfectly capable. Angel is my wife. Paulo's tone was mild but firm. And she's the one who's been managing my recovery since I woke up. I'd like her with me. Marcus's eyes flicked to Angel, then back to his son. Something passed between them, some unspoken communication that Angel couldn't quite read. As you wish, Marcus said finally. Dante, sitting across the table, smiled into his coffee. How sweet! The happy couple getting some quality time. Jealousy doesn't suit you, cousin, Paulo said. Who's jealous? I think it's wonderful you two are bonding. Dante's smile widened. Just don't wander too far from the house. The grounds can be dangerous if you don't know your way around. I'll keep that in mind. After breakfast, Paulo and Angel stepped out onto the terrace. The morning was cool, the sky overcast, threatening rain. They walked in silence until they'd put sufficient distance between themselves and the house, following a path that wound through the gardens and toward a grove of trees at the edge of the property. Did you notice the security cameras? Paulo asked quietly once they were out of direct view of the house. There are cameras? Everywhere. Front gate, driveway, all entrances to the house. But not out here. My mother hated the idea of cameras in the gardens. Said it ruined the natural beauty. My father indulged her, and after she died, he never changed it. When did she die? 10 years ago. Cancer. Paulo's voice was flat, the kind of flat that came from old grief worn smooth by time. But that's not why we're out here. We need to talk about next steps. Okay. My contact came through. The consulting firm that received the $50,000 payment? It's a shell company. Exists on paper, but no actual office, no employees, no services rendered. Angel's stomach tightened. So it was a payoff. Exactly. Which means someone in my family authorized it. The payment came from a discretionary account that Marcus, myself, and Dante all have access to. So it could be any of you. I was in a coma, so probably not me. Paulo's smile was humorless. That leaves my father and my cousin, and I need to know which one tried to kill me. How do we figure that out? We talked to the person who set up the shell company. My contact traced it back to a lawyer named Gerald Foster. He's not family, but he's done work for us before, mostly the kind of work that doesn't show up on official books. He sounds trustworthy. He's not, but he's greedy, and that makes him predictable. Paulo pulled out the burner phone and showed her an address. He has an office downtown. We're going to pay him a visit tomorrow. And say what? Hi, did you help someone try to murder Paolo Bianchi? Something like that. Paulo pocketed the phone. But more subtle. We'll tell him we're looking into family finances, preparing for some estate planning. See if he slips up and reveals who hired him. That's a terrible plan. You have a better one? Angel didn't. They walked for another hour, circling the property while Paulo pointed out landmarks and told her stories about growing up here. His childhood sounded lonely, full of tutors and expectations, and very little actual joy. The only person who'd made it bearable was his mother, and when she died, the house had become a mausoleum. Is that why you stayed in the business? Angel asked. Because your father expected it. Partly. Also because I didn't know what else to do.
Paulo kicked at a stone on the path. I went to college, got a business degree, came back and started working for the family. It was the path laid out for me, so I followed it. Never really questioned if it was what I wanted. And what do you want? Paulo was quiet for a long moment. I used to think I wanted power, control, a seat at the table where the real decisions get made. But lying in that bed for 6 months, trapped in my own head, I realized I'd been chasing the wrong things.
What are the right things?
I'm still figuring that out. They walked back to the house in silence. When they reached the terrace, Dante was waiting, leaning against the stone railing with a cigarette in his hand. Enjoy your walk? He asked. Very much, Paulo said. Good. Family meeting tonight. 7 o'clock in my father's study. Everyone's expected to attend. What's it about? Dante took a drag of his cigarette and exhaled slowly. Business. What else? His eyes shifted to Angel. Your wife's invited too, since she's family now. Paulo's hand found Angel's, his grip firm. We'll be there, Dante smiled. Looking forward to it. He walked away, leaving the smell of tobacco hanging in the air. That was a threat, Angel said quietly. Yes, it was. Paulo squeezed her hand once before letting go. Which means we need to be ready for whatever's coming. The day dragged by in agonizing slowness. Angel tried to keep busy, but her mind kept circling back to the meeting. What did Dante want? Why call everyone together now? Was it related to the investigation, or was it something else entirely? At 6:30, she changed into something more formal, a simple black dress that Helen had left in her closet weeks ago. She stared at herself in the mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. 3 months ago, she'd been a nurse working double shifts and eating ramen for dinner. Now she was wearing expensive clothes and preparing to sit through a Mafia family meeting. The connecting door opened. Paulo stepped through, wearing a suit that fit him perfectly despite the weight he'd lost during the coma. He looked like he belonged in this world of money and power and dangerous games. Ready? He asked. No. Me neither. He offered his arm. Let's go anyway. They walked downstairs together, their footsteps echoing on marble floors. The study was at the back of the house, a massive room lined with bookshelves and dominated by a large oak desk. Marcus sat behind the desk, his expression unreadable. Lorraine and Richard occupied chairs near the fireplace. Dante stood by the window, looking entirely too pleased with himself. Vincent Caruso was there too, briefcase open on the side table, legal pads spread out like he was preparing for war. Sit, Marcus said, gesturing to 2 empty chairs. Paulo and Angel sat. Angel's heart hammered in her chest. Thank you all for coming, Marcus began. There are some matters we need to discuss regarding the family business and Paulo's position within it. My position? Paulo's voice was carefully neutral. Yes. Now that you've recovered, we need to determine how you'll reintegrate into operations. 6 months is a long time to be away. Things have changed. What things? Marcus folded his hands on the desk. Dante has been overseeing several projects in your absence. He's done excellent work, and the board has been impressed with his leadership. I'm sure they have. We're proposing a restructuring, Vincent interjected smoothly. A division of responsibilities that would allow both you and Dante to contribute your strengths to the organization. Meaning what, exactly? Paulo asked. Meaning you'd focus on external relations and public-facing initiatives, while Dante would handle internal operations and strategic planning. Marcus's tone suggested this wasn't a proposal at all. It was a decision already made. Angel felt Paulo's tension from across the space between their chairs. That's a significant reduction in my authority, Paulo said. It's a realistic assessment of the situation, Marcus replied. You've been unconscious for 6 months. You're still recovering. The board needs stability, not someone who might need to step back at any moment for medical reasons. Dr. Patel said my recovery is excellent. There's no medical reason I can't resume my full duties. It's not just about medical concerns. Dante stepped away from the window. It's about what's best for the family. The business needs strong leadership. And frankly, cousin, you've been away too long to just walk back in and take control. I didn't realize you'd be so eager to keep the throne you've been warming. Dante's smile was sharp. I'm not eager. I'm practical. You're opportunistic. Gentlemen,
Vincent cut in. Let's keep this professional. Paolo, the proposal is fair and takes into account both your contributions to the family and the reality of your situation. If you have concerns, we can discuss them. My concern is that you're stripping away everything I built and handing it to someone who's been waiting for me to die. The room went silent. Marcus's expression hardened. That's out of line. Is it? Paolo leaned forward. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my cousin has benefited enormously from my accident. And now, conveniently, there's a proposal to make his temporary power permanent. You're paranoid, Dante said. I'm observant. You're making accusations without evidence. Then prove me wrong. Paolo stood, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. Show me the proposal in writing. Let me review the numbers, the justifications, the board meeting minutes. If this is really about what's best for the family, you'll have nothing to hide. Marcus stood as well, his presence filling the room. Paolo, sit down. No. I said sit down. And I said no. Paolo's voice was steady. I'm not a child, and I'm not an employee you can order around. I'm your son, and I'm the rightful heir to this family. If you want to change that, you're going to have to go through me. The tension in the room was suffocating. Angel's fingernails dug into the arms of her chair, her pulse racing. Finally, Marcus spoke. Get out. Gladly. Paolo turned to leave, then paused. And for the record, I know about the brake lines. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Marcus's face went carefully blank. What? My car. The accident wasn't an accident. Someone cut my brake lines and you covered it up. Paolo's gaze swept across everyone in the room. So before you start talking about what's best for the family, maybe someone should explain why attempted murder is being treated like a minor inconvenience. He walked out without waiting for a response. Angel scrambled to her feet and followed, her legs shaking. They made it halfway up the stairs before Paolo stopped, gripping the railing like it was the only thing keeping him upright. That was reckless, Angel said. I know. You just told them you know. Whoever tried to kill you now knows you're investigating. I know that too. Paolo looked at her, and there was something wild in his eyes, something dangerous. But I'm tired of playing games, tired of pretending I don't see what's happening. They want a war? They can have one. Paolo? Go pack a bag, just the essentials. What? Why? Because we're leaving. Tonight. Angel stared at him. We can't just leave. The contract. Forget the contract. I just declared war on my own family. You think they're going to care about a piece of paper? Paolo started up the stairs again. We have maybe an hour before they figure out how to respond. We need to be gone before that happens. Gone where? Somewhere they can't find us. Somewhere we can figure out who tried to kill me without looking over our shoulders every second. And my father? Paolo stopped at the top of the stairs. I'll have someone I trust check on him, make sure he's safe. But right now we need to worry about ourselves. Angel wanted to argue, wanted to say this was insane, that running would only make things worse. But when she looked at Paolo's face, at the determination mixed with barely controlled fear, she realized he was right. Staying here meant waiting for the next attempt on his life. Leaving meant at least a chance of survival. Okay, she said. 1 hour. They split up. Angel threw clothes into a duffel bag, grabbed her phone charger and the burner phone, and tried not to think about everything she was leaving behind. Her nursing license, her apartment lease, her normal life, all of it felt like it belonged to someone else now. Someone who hadn't signed a contract with the devil and married a man in a coma. 20 minutes later, she was back in Paolo's room. He had a similar bag packed, plus a laptop and several folders of documents. There's a car in the garage, he said. Keys are in the kitchen. We go out the back way, through the gardens, avoid the main driveway. Won't security see us? The cameras on the back gate have been broken for weeks. My father keeps meaning to fix them. Paolo smiled grimly. Lucky for us, he never got around to it. They moved quickly, quietly, through hallways Angel had learned by heart over the past months. Down the back stairs, through the kitchen where the night staff was preparing dinner, out the door into the cool evening air. The gardens were dark, illuminated only by solar lights along the paths. Angel followed Paolo through shadows and past fountains, her breath coming quick and shallow. Every sound seemed amplified, leaves rustling, gravel crunching under their feet, the distant bark of a dog. The garage was a separate building near the back of the property. Paolo used a key card to open the side door, and they slipped inside. Rows of expensive cars gleamed in the dim light. Mercedes, BMW, Porsche. Paolo went straight to a black sedan in the back corner, nondescript and practical. He grabbed keys from a lockbox on the wall and tossed them to Angel. "You drive." "Me? I'm still not cleared to drive, and if we get stopped, it's better if you're behind the wheel." Angel caught the keys and slid into the driver's seat. Her hands were shaking as she started the engine. The sound seemed deafening in the enclosed space. Paolo hit the button for the garage door. It rolled up with agonizing slowness. And there, standing in the doorway with a gun in his hand, was Dante. "Going somewhere?" he asked. Angel's foot slammed on the brake. Paolo went rigid beside her. Dante walked toward the car, the gun held casually at his side. Not pointing at them yet, but the threat was clear. "You really shouldn't have said anything at that meeting, cousin. Made things very complicated." "Get out of the way, Dante." "Can't do that." Dante stopped next to the driver's side window. "See, you've put us all in a difficult position. Running off, talking about investigations, making accusations. That's not how family handles things. Family doesn't try to kill each other." "Doesn't it?" Dante's smile was cold. "You'd be surprised what family will do when there's enough money on the line." "So it was you." Paolo's voice was flat. "You cut my brake lines." "I arranged it. There's a difference." Dante tapped the gun against his thigh. "Nothing personal, Paolo. Just business. You were the heir, I was the spare. But unconscious heirs don't inherit, and the board was ready to make a change. All I had to do was wait for you to die with dignity in your sleep." "But I woke up." "Yeah, you did." "Very inconvenient." Dante raised the gun, pointing it through the window at Angel. "So now we need to fix that mistake, starting with your lovely wife." Angel's blood turned to ice. "Don't," Paolo said, his voice sharp with fear. "She has nothing to do with this." "She has everything to do with this. She's a witness. She went to Tommy Ricci, asked questions, dug up things that should have stayed buried." Dante's finger moved to the trigger. "And now she gets to pay for that curiosity." Everything happened at once. Paolo lunged across the seat, shoving Angel down. The gun went off deafeningly loud in the enclosed space. The windshield exploded into cracks. Angel screamed. She didn't think, just acted. Her foot slammed on the accelerator. The car shot forward, straight at Dante. He threw himself sideways, firing again. The bullet punched through the back window. Angel kept driving. Through the garage door, across the gravel driveway, toward the back gate that Paolo said had broken cameras. Behind them, Dante was shouting, running, trying to get a clear shot. "The gate!" Paolo yelled. "Drive through the gate!" Angel aimed for the chain-link fence and prayed. The car hit it, going 40 miles an hour. Metal screamed. The fence tore away from its posts. And then they were through, bouncing onto a service road, tires squealing as Angel fought for control. "Left! Go left!" She yanked the wheel. The car fishtailed, then straightened. Behind them, headlights appeared in the rearview mirror. Someone was following. "Faster," Paolo said. He had his phone out, dialing frantically. "We need to lose them before they call the police." "I'm going as fast as I can." "Then go faster." Angel pressed the accelerator to the floor. The sedan responded, engine roaring. They flew down the service road, past warehouses and industrial buildings, toward the glow of the city in the distance. The headlights behind them were getting closer. "Turn here," Paolo commanded. Angel took the corner too fast. The car skidded, tires screaming. She wrestled it back under control and kept going. "Now, right." Another turn. They were in a residential neighborhood now, quiet streets lined with houses. The headlights were still there, relentless. "There's a shopping center up ahead," Paolo said. "Pull into the parking garage. We'll lose them in there." Angel saw the structure looming ahead, a massive multi-level parking garage attached to a mall. She took the entrance at speed, tires squealing on concrete. Up the first ramp, then the second, weaving between parked cars. "Stop here," Paolo said. "Kill the lights." Angel parked between two SUVs and shut off the engine. They sat in darkness, breathing hard, watching the rearview mirror.
Headlights appeared at the entrance, moved slowly up the first level. Searching. Angel's hand found Paolo's and gripped it tight. He squeezed back, neither of them speaking, barely breathing. The headlights continued up to the second level, paused, then moved on to the third. They waited 5 minutes. 10. The headlights didn't return. "We need to move," Paolo said finally. "They'll come back with more people. We need to ditch this car and find another way out of the city. Where do we go?" Paolo pulled out his phone and made a call, spoke quickly in a low voice. Hung up. "I have a friend. He has a cabin upstate, off the grid. We can hide there while we figure this out." "Paolo, Dante just tried to kill us. Your family is hunting us. How do we figure anything out?" "I don't know yet, but we're alive, and that's more than we were 5 minutes ago." He looked at her, his face pale in the dim light. "Are you okay?" "No, I'm terrified." "Me too." Paolo's laugh was shaky. "But at least we're terrified together." Angel wanted to cry, or scream, or both. Instead, she started the car and pulled out of the parking space. "Which way?" "North, away from the city." Paolo was already pulling up directions on his phone. "And Angel, thank you for driving through that gate, for not freezing. You saved our lives." "Don't thank me yet," Angel said, pulling out of the garage and back onto the street. "We're not safe yet." But as they drove into the night, putting distance between themselves and the Bianchi estate, Angel realized something had shifted. They weren't just playing at being allies anymore. They weren't just two people trapped by a contract. They were partners now, bound by survival and shared danger, and the knowledge that they only had each other to rely on. And somehow, that felt more real than any marriage certificate. They drove for 3 hours straight, switching highways twice and doubling back once, when Paolo thought he saw headlights following too closely. Angel's hands ached from gripping the steering wheel, and her shoulders were locked with tension. Every passing car felt like a threat. Every set of headlights in the rearview mirror sent her pulse racing. Around midnight, Paolo directed her off the highway, onto a 2-lane road that cut through dense forest. The trees pressed in on both sides, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the moon. Angel's headlights carved a tunnel through the darkness, revealing nothing but asphalt and endless woods. "How much further?" she asked. Her voice sounded strange in the quiet car, hoarse from fear and adrenaline. "Another 20 minutes, maybe 30. Paolo was watching the mirrors, his body angled so he could see behind them. "There's a gas station about 10 miles up. We should stop, switch the plates on the car." "Switch the plates?" "My friend keeps a set in his trunk, just in case." Angel didn't ask what kind of friend kept spare license plates lying around. She was learning that Paolo's world operated by rules she'd never understood, rules that made perfect sense when someone was actively trying to kill you. The gas station appeared like a mirage, its fluorescent lights harsh against the darkness. Only one other car was there, parked near the air pump, with its owner asleep in the driver's seat. Angel pulled around back, near the restrooms, where the shadows were thickest. Paolo got out first, scanning the area before gesturing for her to follow. They moved quickly, quietly. Paolo popped the trunk and found the plates exactly where he said they'd be, wrapped in an old towel. He worked fast, removing the Bianchi estate plates and replacing them with generic ones that would blend in on any highway. "How do you know how to do this?" Angel asked, keeping watch. "You grow up in a family like mine. You learn things." Paolo tightened the last screw and stood. "Useful things, dangerous things. Things that make you wonder what kind of life you're living." He shoved the old plates under the spare tire and closed the trunk. They climbed back into the car without another word. The cabin appeared 40 minutes later, set so far back from the road that Angel almost missed the turnoff. The driveway was overgrown, branches scraping against the car as she navigated the rutted path. The cabin itself was small, maybe 1,000 square feet, with weathered siding and a sagging porch. But it was dark and isolated, and most importantly, it wasn't the Bianchi estate. Paolo used a key from under a fake rock to unlock the door. Inside, the cabin smelled like dust and old wood and disuse. Paolo found a light switch. A single bulb flickered to life, revealing a space that was sparse but functional. One main room with a kitchen area, a bathroom through a door on the left, and a bedroom visible through another door on the right. One bedroom. Angel tried not to think about that.
It's not much, Paulo said, dropping his bag on the worn couch.
But it's off the grid. No paper trail, no security cameras, nothing that can trace back to us. Whose place is this? A friend from college. He bought it years ago as a hunting cabin, but he barely uses it anymore. I helped him out of some trouble once, and he said if I ever needed a place to disappear, this was it. Angel set her bag down next to his. Now that they'd stopped moving, the exhaustion hit her like a wave. Her legs felt weak. Her hands were still shaking. I need to call the rehab facility, she said. Check on my father. Use the burner, and don't tell them where you are. Angel made the call from the porch, staring out at the dark forest, while a night nurse assured her that Robert was fine, sleeping soundly, his vitals all stable. She hung up and let herself breathe for the first time in hours. When she came back inside, Paulo had found some bottled water in a cabinet and was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. He looked up when she entered. Your father okay? For now. Angel sat down next to him, careful to leave space between them. What about yours? What do you think Marcus is doing right now? Damage control. Calling in favors, making sure the police don't get involved, deciding how to handle the fact that his son and daughter-in-law just fled the estate at gunpoint. Paulo's laugh was bitter. And probably calling Dante to ask what the hell he was thinking.
You think Marcus knew about Dante trying to kill you? I don't know. Part of me wants to believe he didn't. That he covered up the accident because he thought it was genuinely an accident, that he was trying to protect the family from scandal. Paulo rubbed his face. But another part of me knows my father. He doesn't miss things. If Dante was planning something, Marcus would have known. Then why not stop it? Because maybe he didn't want to. The words came out quiet, heavy with the pain that Angel recognized. The pain of realizing your parent wasn't who you thought they were. Dante's ambitious, but he's controllable. I'm not. I ask questions, push back, refuse to fall in line. Maybe Marcus decided it was easier to have a son he could manage than one who challenged him. Angel didn't know what to say to that. So she just sat with him in the silence, listening to the wind in the trees and the creak of the old cabin settling. We should try to sleep, Paulo said eventually. Tomorrow we need to figure out our next move. What is our next move? I don't know yet, but first thing in the morning I'm calling some people. People who aren't family, who don't owe the Bianchis anything. We need information, evidence, something concrete that proves Dante was behind the accident. Paulo stood and stretched, wincing. His body still wasn't used to this much activity. And we need to figure out how to stay alive long enough to use it. Angel followed him toward the bedroom, then stopped in the doorway. The bed was small, barely big enough for two people. There was no couch in the room, no other sleeping option except the worn furniture in the main room. Paulo seemed to realize the problem at the same time. I'll take the couch. You need rest more than I do. Your recovery, I'll take the couch, he repeated firmly. You take the bed. Paulo Angel, please, just take the bed. He grabbed a pillow from the bedroom and retreated to the living room before she could argue further. She closed the door and collapsed onto the bed, still fully clothed, too exhausted to care about changing. But sleep didn't come easily. Every sound outside made her tense. Every creak of the cabin made her wonder if someone had found them. She stared at the ceiling, watching shadows shift with the wind, and tried not to think about Dante's gun pointed at her head. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, she heard movement in the other room. Footsteps, quiet but restless. Paulo couldn't sleep either. Angel got up and opened the door. Paulo was standing by the window, staring out at the darkness, his phone in his hand. Can't sleep? She asked. He didn't turn around. Keeps replaying in my head. The gun, the gunshots, the look on Dante's face when he admitted he tried to kill me. Like it was just business, just another problem to solve. He's wrong. It's not just business. To him it is. To all of them. Paulo finally turned to face her. My family runs on power and money and loyalty, in that order. Everything else is expendable, including me. Angel crossed the room and stood beside him at the window. Not to me. Paulo looked at her, something vulnerable flickering across his face. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you didn't ask for any of this. I know you woke up from a coma to find your life stolen. And I know you're trying to do the right thing, even though it would be easier to just walk away. Walking away means your father loses his care. So does dying. And you're choosing to fight instead of run. That says something about who you are. They stood close in the darkness, close enough that Angel could see the exhaustion in Paulo's eyes, the tension in his jaw. Close enough that when he reached out and took her hand, she didn't pull away. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for driving through that gate, for not leaving when I gave you the chance, for being here. Where else would I be? Somewhere safe, somewhere far away from all of this." "Safe is overrated." Angel squeezed his hand.
Besides, we made a deal, remember? 1 year. I'm not backing out just because someone started shooting. Paulo almost smiled. That's a hell of a commitment. I'm a hell of a wife. This time he did smile, tired but genuine. Yeah, you are. They stood there for another moment, hands linked, neither of them willing to be the first to let go. Then Paulo stepped back, releasing her hand with obvious reluctance. Try to get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. Angel nodded and returned to the bedroom. This time when she closed her eyes, sleep came easier. Not because she felt safe, she didn't, but because she didn't feel alone. Morning arrived gray and cold, rain pattering against the cabin's roof. Angel woke to the smell of coffee and found Paulo in the kitchen area, working the old percolator on the stove. He'd changed clothes, his hair still damp from a shower. There's hot water, he said, noticing her in the doorway. Not much, but enough for a quick shower if you want one. Angel grabbed her bag and escaped to the bathroom. The shower was cramped and the water pressure was terrible, but it felt like heaven to wash away the fear and exhaustion of the previous night. When she emerged 15 minutes later, Paulo had set out 2 mugs of coffee and was on his phone, speaking in rapid Italian. He hung up as she approached. That was Antonio. He's my father's accountant, but he's loyal to me, not the family. I asked him to pull records of all transfers from that discretionary account going back 2 years. Will he do it? He's already doing it. Should have the records by this afternoon. Paulo handed her a mug. I also called Tommy Ricci. Told him to disappear for a while. If Dante figures out we talked to him, Tommy's a loose end they'll want to tie up. Do you think he'll listen? I think he's smart enough to know what happens to people who cross the Bianchis. Paulo sipped his coffee, grimacing at the bitterness. We need to talk about what happens next. Best case scenario, we get evidence that proves Dante paid for the hit on me. Then what? We go to the police. And tell them what? That the son of Marcus Bianchi hired someone to cut his cousin's brake lines? You think they'll investigate? The Bianchis own half the police force, Angel. We'd be walking into a trap. Then what? We just live in hiding forever? No. We build a case so airtight that even my family's connections can't bury it. Multiple sources, financial records, maybe even the actual mechanic who cut the lines. Then we take it to the FBI, not local police. Federal jurisdiction means fewer people on my family's payroll. Angel set her mug down. And what happens to you when all this comes out? To your family? My family? Paulo's laugh was harsh. My family tried to kill me, Angel. They forced you into a fake marriage, threatened your father, covered up attempted murder. What happens to them is justice. But they're still your family. That stopped mattering when Dante pointed a gun at you. Paulo's voice went cold. He crossed a line. They all did. And I'm done protecting people who wouldn't protect me. The conviction in his voice was absolute, and Angel realized this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about revenge, or justice, or both. She wasn't sure there was a difference at this point. Paulo's phone buzzed. He checked it and frowned. It's a message from Helen. Your housekeeper? She says Marcus wants to talk. Just talk. No threats, no violence. He's willing to meet in a neutral location. It's a trap. Probably, but what if it's not? Paulo looked at her. What if he genuinely wants to resolve this without more bloodshed? You don't believe that? No, but I want to. The admission seemed to cost him something. He's still my father, and part of me, the stupid part, still hopes there's some explanation that makes sense. That he didn't know what Dante was planning, that he's willing to make this right. Angel understood that hope. She'd seen it before in patients' families, that desperate need to believe the people you loved weren't capable of terrible things. It was usually wrong, but that didn't make it any less powerful. If you meet him, I'm coming with you, she said.
Absolutely not. Paulo, you almost died last night because of me. I'm not putting you in danger again. I almost died last night because of your family, and I'm already in danger, whether I'm with you or not. At least together we can watch each other's backs. Paulo started to argue, then stopped. He studied her face for a long moment. You're not going to let this go, are you? No. Stubborn. Takes one to know one. Paulo shook his head, but there was something like admiration in his eyes. Fine, but if anything feels wrong, we leave. No heroics, no trying to fix things, we just run. Agreed. They spent the rest of the morning preparing. Paulo made more calls, arranging the meeting for that evening at a restaurant in the city, public, crowded, with multiple exits. He also arranged for Antonio to be nearby with the financial records, ready to hand them over if things went south. Around noon, Paulo's phone rang again. This time it was Vincent Caruso. I'm calling on behalf of Marcus, Vincent said, his voice carrying through the speakerphone. He wants you to know that what happened with Dante was unauthorized. The family had no knowledge of his actions, and measures have been taken to ensure your safety. What kind of measures? Paulo asked. Dante has been removed from all business operations pending a full investigation. He's been asked to leave the estate. Asked? Removed, Vincent corrected smoothly. Marcus takes this very seriously, Paulo. He wants to repair the relationship with you and your wife. He's prepared to make significant concessions. Like what? That's what tonight's meeting is for. But I can tell you that the restructuring proposal has been shelved. You would return to your full position and authority. Paulo's jaw tightened. And I'm just supposed to forget that someone tried to kill me? No one's asking you to forget. But we can move forward from this, together, as a family. I'll think about it. Don't think too long. The board is getting nervous about the instability. They need to know there's leadership in place. Vincent paused. And Paulo? Come alone tonight. Your wife has been through enough trauma. Let's keep this between you and your father. Paulo glanced at Angel. I'll think about that too. He hung up before Vincent could respond. They don't want me there, Angel said, which is exactly why you're coming. Paulo stood and paced the small room. Vincent's trying to isolate me. Make me think this is about family reconciliation when it's really about control. So we go to the meeting prepared for things to go wrong. We go prepared for war. The afternoon dragged by in tense preparation. Paulo went through the documents he'd taken from the estate, highlighting discrepancies and questionable transactions. Angel checked and rechecked the burner phone, making sure it was fully charged. They ate a silent lunch of canned soup and crackers, neither of them tasting the food. Around 4, Antonio called back. He'd found something interesting in the financial records. The $50,000 to the shell company wasn't the only suspicious payment, Antonio explained. There were 3 smaller transfers in the weeks leading up to it. $5,000 here, $3,000 there, all to different accounts, all untraceable. Set up payments, Paulo said. He was arranging everything piece by piece. That's what it looks like. But here's the thing. The authorization codes for those transfers, they weren't Dante's. Paulo went very still. Whose were they? Your father's. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Angel watched Paulo's face go blank, all emotion draining away. She wanted to reach for him, to offer comfort, but she didn't know if he'd accept it right now. You're sure? Paulo asked, his voice carefully neutral. I've triple-checked. The authorization codes don't lie. Marcus approved those payments personally. But not the final $50,000. No, that one was Dante, like he saw what your father started and decided to finish it. Paulo closed his eyes. Send me everything. All the records, all the codes, all the documentation. And Antonio, thank you for doing this. Be careful, Paulo. If Marcus finds out I gave you this, he won't. I promise. Paulo hung up and sat down heavily on the couch. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at the floor like he was trying to make sense of something that would never make sense. Angel sat beside him. I'm sorry. Don't be. You were right from the beginning. This was never about safety or stability or any of the lies they told. My father wanted me gone, and Dante was happy to make it happen. Paulo's voice was hollow. I just didn't want to believe it.
What do we do now? We go to the meeting. We get Marcus to admit what he did, and then we burn his entire empire to the ground. Paulo looked at her, and his eyes were cold. No more hoping for reconciliation. No more trying to save relationships that were dead before I ever woke up from that coma. We finished this tonight. Angel nodded. There was nothing else to say. They left the cabin at 6, giving themselves plenty of time to reach the restaurant. Paulo drove this time, navigating the dark roads with a focus that bordered on obsessive. Angel watched the mirrors, looking for tails. But the roads were empty. The restaurant was exactly what Paulo had promised. Crowded, loud, full of people who wouldn't notice one more tense conversation. They arrived 15 minutes early and secured a table near the back exit. Paulo positioned himself so he could see the entrance. Marcus arrived exactly on time, alone except for 2 men in dark suits who positioned themselves near the front door. His father looked older than Angel remembered, the lines in his face deeper, his shoulders slightly stooped. He spotted them immediately and walked over. Paulo, Angel. Marcus nodded to her like this was a normal family dinner. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Let's skip the pleasantries, Paulo said. What do you want? Marcus sat down across from them. I want to fix what Dante broke. He acted without authorization, without approval. What he did was unacceptable, and he's been dealt with accordingly. Dealt with how? He's been removed from the family. His access to all accounts and business operations has been revoked. He'll receive a settlement to ensure his silence, but he's no longer one of us. How generous, Paulo's voice dripped with sarcasm. And I'm just supposed to come back, pretend none of this happened? I'm asking you to come home, to take your rightful place in the family. The restructuring is off the table. You'll have full authority, full control. Marcus leaned forward. I know trust has been damaged, but we can rebuild it. Time and consistency, that's all it takes. Time and consistency, Paulo repeated slowly, like the time you spent covering up the fact that my brake lines were cut, or the consistency with which you lied to me about it being an accident. Marcus's expression didn't change. I did what I thought was necessary to protect the family, by letting the person who tried to kill me walk free, by preventing a scandal that would have destroyed everything we've built. You were in a coma, Paulo. For all we knew, you'd never wake up. Making a public accusation against Dante would have torn the family apart for nothing. For nothing? Paulo's voice rose slightly. My life is nothing? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you decided I was expendable. Marcus's jaw tightened. You're my son. You've never been expendable. Then prove it. Paulo pulled out his phone and placed it on the table. Tell me the truth. All of it. Starting with the financial transfers you authorized in the weeks before the accident. The change in Marcus was instant. His face went carefully blank, the same expression Paulo had worn earlier when Antonio delivered the news. I don't know what you're talking about. Authorization codes, Paulo said. 3 transfers totaling $13,000, all to accounts connected with the shell company that received the final $50,000. Your codes, your approvals. You set this up, and Dante finished it. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Around them, the restaurant continued its normal rhythm. Conversations, laughter, the clink of silverware on plates. Normal people having normal dinners, completely unaware of the confession hanging in the balance. Who told you this? Marcus asked finally. Does it matter? Yes, because whoever gave you that information is breaking several laws and violating their confidentiality agreement. I'm not here to discuss Antonio's employment status. I'm here for the truth. Did you authorize those payments? Another long silence. Then Marcus exhaled slowly. Yes. Angel felt the confession like a physical blow. She'd expected it, had known it was coming, but hearing him admit it made it real in a way the financial records hadn't. Paulo's hands clenched on the table. Why? Because the board was getting restless. Because the business needed stability and you were becoming a liability. Because... Marcus stopped, seemed to reconsider his words. Because I thought it was the only way to protect everything we'd built. So you decided to kill me? No. I decided to create circumstances where the succession could be handled smoothly if something happened to you naturally. Cutting brake lines isn't natural. I didn't cut anything. I authorized payments for contingency planning.
Dante took that and ran with it in a direction I never intended. You're lying. Paulo's voice was flat. You knew exactly what those payments were for. You set everything in motion and let Dante think it was his idea. That way, if anything went wrong, you had plausible deniability. Marcus didn't deny it. His silence was confirmation enough. Paulo stood abruptly. We're done here. Paulo, wait. No. You had your chance to tell the truth, and you couldn't even do that honestly. You tried to kill me, you forced Angel into a fake marriage to cover your tracks, and now you want me to come back and pretend we're a family? Paulo leaned down, his voice low and dangerous. You're not my family anymore. You're just someone I used to know. He turned to leave. Angel started to follow. If you walk out that door, Marcus said quietly, you'll have nothing. No money, no home, no protection. The family will consider you a threat, and threats are eliminated. Paulo stopped, turned back. Is that what I am to you? A threat? You're my son, but you're also in possession of information that could destroy us. I can't let you leave with that. Try to stop me. Marcus raised his hand slightly. The two men in suits moved toward the table. Paulo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled, cold and satisfied. Too late. What? Those financial records Antonio sent me? I forwarded them to the FBI an hour ago, along with a detailed statement about the accident, Tommy Ricci's testimony, and everything else I could compile. Paulo pocketed his phone. Special Agent Melissa Foster is probably getting a warrant for your arrest right now. Maybe Dante's too if they can find him. Marcus's face went white. You wouldn't. I already did. Paulo took Angel's hand. And just so we're clear, if anything happens to me, to Angel, to her father, or to anyone else involved in this, if we so much as get a suspicious flat tire, those records go public. Every newspaper, every news station, every media outlet that's ever wanted dirt on the Bianca family. Your empire won't just fall, it'll be obliterated. Paulo, please. Goodbye, Marcus. Enjoy the next few hours of freedom. They'll probably be your last. They walked out of the restaurant together, Paulo's hand still gripping Angel's tightly. Behind them, Angel could hear Marcus calling his name, could feel the stares of the men in suits, but Paulo didn't slow down. They made it to the car, climbed in, and Paulo drove away with deliberate calm. They made it 3 blocks before Angel realized she'd been holding her breath. Did you really send everything to the FBI? She asked. Yes. When? This afternoon, after Antonio called. I drafted the statement, attached the records, and sent it to an agent I've heard handles organized crime cases. Paulo's hands were steady on the wheel. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to have to lie if Marcus asked. And the threat about releasing everything publicly? Also true. I've set up a dead man's switch. If I don't check in every 48 hours, everything gets sent to a journalist friend who's been waiting years for a chance to take down my family. Angel felt something like awe mixing with fear. You planned all of this. I had to. Marcus was never going to confess without leverage, and I needed him to know that killing me wouldn't solve his problem anymore. Paulo glanced at her. Are you okay? I don't know. That was your father. You just destroyed him. He destroyed himself when he decided I was worth less than his empire. Paulo's voice was steady, but Angel could hear the pain underneath. I gave him chances, multiple chances. He chose to lie every single time. They drove in silence for a while. Angel watched the city lights blur past, thinking about Marcus's face when Paulo revealed what he'd done. The shock, the fear, the realization that his son had outmaneuvered him completely. What happens now? She asked. Now we wait. The FBI will investigate. If the evidence is as solid as Antonio says, they'll bring charges. Marcus will fight it. We'll throw money at lawyers and try to make deals. But with federal charges, Paulo shrugged. Even the Bianchis can't buy their way out of attempted murder. And us? We stay hidden until we know it's safe. The cabin, or somewhere else if we need to move. And we wait for the dust to settle. He squeezed her hand. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose to stay. You shouldn't have had to choose. Maybe not, but I did. Angel looked at their joined hands, at the gold band still on her finger. And for what it's worth, I'd choose the same thing again. Paolo pulled the car over suddenly into the parking lot of a closed strip mall. He put it in park and turned to face her fully. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you choose this? You could have walked away a dozen times. Could have broken the contract, disappeared, started over somewhere new. Why stay?" Angel thought about all the reasons: the money, her father's care, the contract itself. But none of those felt true anymore. The real reason was simpler and more complicated than any of that. Because when I look at you, I don't see a mafia heir or a business deal or any of the things your family tried to make you into. I see someone who's fighting for what's right, even when it costs everything. And I want to be the kind of person who fights alongside you. Paolo stared at her, something shifting in his expression. Then he leaned forward and kissed her. It wasn't romantic or gentle or any of the things movies made kisses look like. It was desperate and grateful and full of all the fear and relief and emotion they'd been holding back since the moment Dante pointed that gun. Angel kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, anchoring herself to this one solid thing in a world that had turned into chaos. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "That was, Paolo started. "Complicated," Angel finished. "Yeah." They stared at each other in the dim light of the parking lot. "We should probably talk about this," Paolo said. "Probably. But maybe not right now?" "Definitely not right now." Paolo laughed, shaky but real. "Okay, not right now." He pulled back onto the road, and they continued driving into the night. But his hand found hers again. And this time when Angel squeezed it, it felt like something more than partnership or survival. It felt like a beginning. They didn't go back to the cabin that night. Paolo drove them to a motel 2 towns over, the kind of place that took cash and didn't ask questions. They checked in under fake names and paid for 3 nights, though neither of them knew if they'd need that long. The room was small and dated, with thin carpets and a television that only got 5 channels. But it had a lock on the door and curtains thick enough to block out the world, and right now that was all that mattered. Angel sat on the edge of the bed, while Paolo checked his phone for the 100th time. No new messages from the FBI. No calls from Marcus. No indication that the storm they'd unleashed had reached its peak yet. "You should eat something," Paolo said, not looking up from the screen. "I'm not hungry." "Neither am I, but we need to keep our strength up." He finally set the phone down. "There's a diner across the street. I'll go grab some food." "I don't want you going alone." "Angel, I don't want you going alone," she repeated firmly. "We stay together. That's how this works now." Paolo studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "Okay. Together." They walked to the diner through the cold night air, both of them scanning the parking lot, the street, the shadows between buildings. The diner was nearly empty, just an elderly couple in one booth and a trucker at the counter. They slid into a booth near the back exit. The waitress brought menus and coffee without being asked. Angel wrapped her hands around the mug, letting the warmth seep into her palms. Across from her, Paolo stared at the menu like he was reading a foreign language. "We kissed," he said suddenly. Angel nearly choked on her coffee. "That's what you want to talk about right now?" "We need to talk about it at some point." "How about at some point when we're not running for our lives?" "We might always be running for our lives. That's kind of our situation." Paolo set the menu down. "Look, I'm not good at this. Relationships, feelings, any of it. My family doesn't exactly model healthy, emotional communication, but I need you to know that wasn't just adrenaline or fear or whatever people say about near-death experiences." Angel's heart was doing something complicated in her chest. "Then what was it?" "I don't know, but it felt real, and I haven't felt anything real in a very long time." The waitress returned before Angel could respond, taking their orders with practiced efficiency. When she left, the silence between them felt different, charged with something neither of them knew how to name. "This is a mess," Angel said finally. "We're legally married because your family forced us into it. We're hiding from people who want us dead. We've known each other for barely 3 months, most of which you spent unconscious. This is not how relationships are supposed to start." "I know. And we're probably going to have to testify against your father. There'll be trials, media coverage, your entire family's secrets exposed for everyone to see. It's going to get worse before it gets better." "I know that too." "So why are we even talking about this?" Paolo reached across the table and took her hand.
Because when that gun was pointed at you, all I could think was that I'd brought you into this nightmare and I might get you killed.
And the idea of losing you before I ever really had you, that scared me more than dying. Angel looked at their joined hands, at the fake wedding ring that somehow felt more real than anything else in her life right now. I'm scared too. Of dying? Of this? Of whatever this is between us. Because it matters, Paulo. You matter. And I don't know if I can handle losing someone else I care about. Your father's going to be fine. I'm not talking about my father. Angel met his eyes. I'm talking about you. When we're in the middle of all this chaos, when we're fighting just to survive, it's easy to ignore feelings. But eventually the dust settles and we're going to have to figure out what we actually are to each other. And that terrifies me. Paulo squeezed her hand. Then let's be terrified together. We've been doing everything else together. Why stop now? Angel laughed despite herself. That's terrible logic. It's the best I've got. Their food arrived, and they ate in silence, both of them too aware of the conversation they'd started and too uncertain how to finish it. When they returned to the motel room, Paulo's phone finally rang. It was Special Agent Melissa Foster. Paulo answered on speaker. Hello? Mr. Bianchi, I've reviewed the materials you sent. I need to meet with you as soon as possible. Is that standard procedure? Nothing about this case is standard. Foster's voice was crisp, professional. Your father has already retained a team of attorneys. They're claiming the evidence is fabricated and threatening to sue for defamation. I need your testimony to move forward with the investigation. Paulo looked at Angel. She nodded. Where and when? Paulo asked. There's a federal building in the city. Can you be there tomorrow at 10? We'll be there. Come prepared to give a detailed statement. And Mr. Bianchi, be careful. Your family has a long reach, and they're going to do everything they can to discredit you. I'm aware. Foster hung up. Paulo set the phone down and rubbed his face with both hands. Tomorrow we make it official, he said. Once I give that statement, there's no taking it back. My father goes to trial, and I'm the star witness against him. Are you having second thoughts? No, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Angel moved to sit beside him on the bed. He made his choices. You're making yours. I know, doesn't make it easier. Paulo leaned back against the headboard. When I was a kid, maybe 8 or 9, I got into a fight at school. Some older kid was picking on someone smaller, and I stepped in, got a black eye and a split lip for my trouble. When my father found out, he didn't ask if I was okay. He asked if I won. Did you? No, the other kid was bigger, stronger. I never stood a chance. Paulo's smile was sad. But my father said it didn't matter. What mattered was that I stood up, that I fought even when I knew I'd lose. He said that was what it meant to be a Bianchi, never backing down, no matter the cost. And now you're standing up to him. Yeah, guess I learned that lesson too well. Angel rested her head on his shoulder. For what it's worth, I think your 8-year-old self would be proud. Thanks. Paulo's arm wrapped around her, pulling her closer. We should try to sleep. Tomorrow's going to be long. But neither of them moved. They sat there in the dim motel room, holding on to each other like they were the only solid things in a world that kept shifting beneath them. Eventually, Angel felt Paulo's breathing even out, his body relaxing into sleep. She closed her eyes and let herself drift, feeling safer than she had any right to feel given their circumstances. Morning came too quickly. They dressed in silence, both of them putting on the kind of armor that came from preparing for battle. Paulo wore a suit he'd grabbed from the estate, looking every inch the heir he was supposed to be. Angel chose simple black pants and a white blouse, professional and forgettable. The drive to the federal building took 40 minutes. Paulo parked 3 blocks away, and they walked the rest of the distance, both of them scanning for threats. The building was imposing, all concrete and glass, with security screening at every entrance. Special Agent Foster met them in the lobby. She was younger than Angel expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a handshake that was all business. Thank you for coming, Foster said. Follow me. She led them through security and up to the 5th floor, into a conference room with a long table and recording equipment set up at one end. 2 other agents were already there, both men in their 40s, both looking like they'd seen everything and believed nothing.
This is Agent Chen and Agent Rodriguez, Foster said. They'll be assisting with the interview. Mr. Bianchi, if you'll have a seat. Miss Matthews, you're welcome to wait in the observation room. I'd prefer she stay, Paulo said. Foster considered this. The interview might contain information about family business that you'd rather keep confidential. She's my wife. She has a right to hear it. Very well. Foster gestured to a chair beside Paulo's. But understand that anything said in this room is part of an ongoing federal investigation. That includes you, Miss Matthews. Angel sat. I understand. The interview lasted 4 hours. Foster and her team went through everything methodically. The accident, Paulo's recovery, the discovery of the cut brake lines, the financial transfers, Marcus's confession at the restaurant. Paulo answered every question with the same careful precision, never embellishing, never holding back. He laid out the evidence piece by piece, building a case that was damning in its thoroughness. When they reached the part about Dante, Paulo's voice went flat. My cousin pointed a gun at my wife. He admitted to arranging the hit on me and said it was just business. Then he tried to kill us both. Paulo looked directly at Foster. I want him arrested. I want him prosecuted. I want him in prison where he can't hurt anyone else. We're working on locating Mr. Dante Bianchi, Foster said. He hasn't been seen at the family estate since the night you fled. Do you have any idea where he might have gone? Dante has properties all over. Apartments in the city, a house upstate, connections in Europe. He could be anywhere. We'll find him. Foster made a note. Now, regarding your father's involvement, the door opened. Vincent Caruso walked in, briefcase in hand, looking like he owned the building. This interview is over, Vincent announced. Foster didn't even look up. Mr. Caruso, you have no standing here. I represent both Marcus Bianchi and his son, Paulo, and I'm invoking my client's right to legal counsel. I'm not your client, Paulo said coldly. According to your father, you are. He's instructed me to provide you with representation in this matter. I don't want your representation. I don't want anything from my father. Paulo, don't be foolish. These agents are building a case against your family. Anything you say will be used against Marcus, against the business, against everyone you know. Let me help you navigate this. I don't need navigation. I need justice. Vincent's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. Once this goes public, your life is over. The media will destroy you, the business will collapse, and every enemy your family has made over the years will come crawling out to take their revenge. Is that really what you want? What I want is for people to stop trying to kill me. Paulo stood. And if that means burning everything down, then yes, that's exactly what I want. Agent Foster, Vincent said, turning his attention away from Paulo, I'm formally requesting that this interview be suspended pending proper legal representation for my client. Your client has declined representation, Foster said, and he's here voluntarily. So unless you have a court order, Mr. Caruso, you need to leave. Vincent looked at Paulo one more time. You're destroying everything your family built. No, they destroyed it. I'm just making sure everyone knows. Vincent left without another word. The door closed behind him and the room felt lighter somehow, like a pressure had been released. That was brave, Rodriguez said. Stupid, but brave. I've been hearing that a lot lately. Paulo sat back down. Can we continue? They finished the interview an hour later. Foster thanked them both, promised to be in touch, and arranged for agents to keep an eye on Angel's father at the rehabilitation facility. When they finally stepped back out onto the street, the sun was high overhead, and the city felt like it had moved on without them. What now? Angel asked. Now we wait for the wheels of justice to turn. Paulo took her hand as they walked back to the car. And we figure out what comes after. After what? After all of this. The trials, the media circus, the family implosion. Eventually it'll be over, and we'll need to decide what we actually want our lives to look like. Angel thought about the contract, about the year they were supposed to spend married. It felt like a lifetime ago that she'd signed those papers, trading her freedom for her father's life. So much had changed since then. She'd changed. I want my father to finish his recovery, she said. I want to see him walk out of that facility healthy and strong. Okay, what else? I want to go back to nursing, real nursing, not just being someone's caretaker because a contract says I have to. That's good. What else? Angel stopped walking and turned to face him. I want to know if what we have is real, or if it's just trauma bonding and survival instinct.
Paulo's expression softened. Only one way to find out. Which is? We keep doing what we've been doing.
Taking it one day at a time, figuring things out as we go. No pressure, no expectations, just seeing what happens. That's very non-committal for someone who's legally married to me. I'm working on my commitment issues. Paulo smiled. Give me time. How much time? However long it takes. He pulled her closer. I know this started as a transaction, a deal made out of desperation. But somewhere along the way, it became something else. And I'd like to find out what that something is, if you're willing. Angel thought about all the reasons she should say no. The mess they were in, the danger that still lurked around every corner, the fact that they barely knew each other outside of crisis mode. But then she thought about the way Paulo looked at her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to humanity. The way he'd put himself between her and danger without hesitation. The way he'd blown up his entire life to protect her. I'm willing, she said. Paulo kissed her there on the sidewalk, in broad daylight, with cars passing and people walking by. It was nothing like the desperate kiss in the parking lot. This one was softer, full of possibility instead of fear. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange kind of limbo. They stayed at the motel, moving to a new location every few days, just to be safe. Foster kept them updated on the investigation's progress. Marcus had been formally charged with conspiracy to commit murder, Dante was still missing, and the media had gotten wind of the story. The headlines were brutal. Mafia heir turns on family. Bianca empire crumbles. Son's testimony could put father behind bars. Paulo refused to read any of them, but Angel could see the weight of it all settling on his shoulders. During the days, they existed in a weird routine. Paulo worked with federal prosecutors, building the case against his father. Angel visited her father at the facility, which was now under federal protection. Robert was thriving in his recovery, asking fewer questions than Angel expected about where she was living and why federal agents were suddenly watching his every move. During the nights, they talked. About their childhoods, their dreams, the lives they'd imagined before everything went sideways. Paulo admitted he'd wanted to be an architect once, before the family business swallowed that dream whole. Angel confessed that she'd almost dropped out of nursing school 3 times, convinced she wasn't smart enough or strong enough or good enough. You're all of those things, Paulo said one night, lying beside her in yet another motel bed. You drove through a fence while someone was shooting at you. You married a stranger to save your father. You stood by me when walking away would have been smarter and safer. You're the strongest person I know. I don't feel strong. I feel terrified most of the time. Being strong and being scared aren't mutually exclusive. Some of the bravest things I've ever seen people do, they were shaking the whole time. Angel rolled onto her side to face him. Do you think we'll ever have a normal life? Define normal. I don't know. Jobs, routines, boring weekends. The kind of life where the most exciting thing that happens is deciding what to have for dinner. Paulo was quiet for a moment. I'd like that. The boring parts, I mean. I spent my whole life in this world of power and violence and secrets. Boring sounds like paradise. We could have that, after all this is over. Yeah, we could. Paulo reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Where would you want to live? Somewhere small? Maybe a town where nobody knows who the Bianchis are. I know a place like that. Upstate, near the Canadian border. Beautiful in the fall, quiet all year round. We could get a house, maybe near a lake. You'd really leave the city? I'd leave everything if it meant starting fresh with you. Angel felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been locked tight since the day she signed that contract. Paulo Bianchi, are you proposing a real life to me? I'm proposing whatever you want. Real life, real marriage, real future. All of it. Even though we barely know each other? We know the important things. We know we're willing to fight for each other. We know we're stronger together than apart. Everything else is just details. Angel kissed him, slow and deep, and let herself believe in the possibility of after.
4 weeks after Paolo's testimony, the trial began. Marcus Bianchi pleaded not guilty to all charges and hired the best defense team money could buy. They argued that the financial transfers were legitimate business expenses, that the authorization codes had been stolen, that Paolo was a disgruntled son looking for revenge against a father who'd simply tried to protect the family legacy. Paolo took the stand on the third day. Angel sat in the gallery watching him calmly dismantle every defense argument with facts and evidence and the kind of quiet conviction that couldn't be shaken. He never raised his voice, never showed emotion, just methodically built the case against his father until there was no reasonable doubt left. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Marcus Bianchi was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. He showed no emotion as the judge read the sentence, didn't look at Paolo once. He was led away in handcuffs, and that was the last time Paolo saw his father. Dante was found a week later, trying to board a flight to Buenos Aires. He was extradited back and charged separately. His trial was shorter, his defense weaker. He got 30 years. The Bianchi empire, as expected, collapsed. The business was dismantled, assets seized, properties sold to pay restitution to victims of the family's various crimes. Paolo inherited nothing, which was exactly what he wanted. 6 months after the verdict, Angel and Paolo stood in a small courthouse similar to the one where they'd first been married. But this time, there were flowers. There were friends. A few nurses from Angel's old hospital, Antonio the accountant, Special Agent Foster who'd become an unlikely ally. There was Angel's father, walking slowly but steadily down the aisle to give his daughter away. And this time, when Paolo took Angel's hand and said his vows, he meant every word. I, Paolo, take you, Angel, to be my wife. Not because a contract says I have to, not because circumstances forced us together, but because I choose you. Every day, in every way, I choose you. Angel's voice shook when she spoke her vows. I, Angel, take you, Paolo, to be my husband. You woke up to a nightmare and turned it into something beautiful. You showed me what it means to fight for what's right, even when it costs everything, and I choose to spend the rest of my life fighting alongside you. The judge who married them smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Paolo did, thoroughly, while their small gathering of witnesses cheered. After the ceremony, Paolo pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It was the original contract, the one that had started everything. He held it up so Angel could see. Vincent gave me this before the trial, said I might want it for posterity or legal documentation or something. Paolo pulled out a lighter. I have a better idea. He set the contract on fire. They watched it burn, the words that had bound them turning to ash and smoke. When it was nothing but cinders, Paolo scattered them in the wind. We're free, he said. We were always free, Angel corrected. We just didn't know it yet. They bought a house 6 months later, exactly where Paolo had described. Upstate, near a lake, in a town where nobody cared about the Bianchi name or the trial or any of it. Angel got a job at the local hospital. Paolo started taking architecture classes at the community college, finally chasing that old dream. Robert moved into a small apartment nearby, fully recovered and working part-time at a hardware store. He had dinner with us every Sunday and eventually stopped asking if they were really okay. They were more than okay. On their first anniversary, the real one, not the contract one, Paolo took Angel out to the lake. They sat on the dock watching the sunset paint the water gold and orange and pink. I was thinking, Paolo said, we should probably talk about the future. We talk about the future all the time. I mean the long-term future. Kids? Maybe. If that's something you want. Angel looked at him in surprise. You want kids? I want a family, a real one. The kind I never had growing up. The kind where people choose to be together, not because of business or obligation or fear. Paolo took her hand. And I want that with you, if you want it too. Angel thought about everything they'd survived to get here. The fear, the danger, the betrayal, the loss. And she thought about everything they'd built, this life, this love, this choice to be together every single day. I want it too, she said. Paolo pulled her close, and they sat there watching the sun disappear below the horizon. The darkness that followed wasn't scary anymore. It was just the space between one day and the next, full of possibility and promise, and the certainty that whatever came, they'd face it together. Angel had signed a contract once, out of desperation and fear, marrying a man she'd never met to save her father's life. It had been the worst decision and the best decision and the most complicated decision she'd ever made. But sitting here now with Paolo's arm around her and their future spreading out like the lake before them, Angel realized something. That contract hadn't trapped her. It had freed her. It had brought her to exactly where she was supposed to be. Sometimes the worst circumstances led to the best outcomes. Sometimes deals made in desperation turned into something real. Sometimes you had to lose everything to find out what actually mattered. And sometimes, just sometimes, marriages that started as contracts turned into love stories. Paolo kissed her temple. "What are you thinking about?" "How lucky I am." "Lucky? We almost died. Multiple times." "I know, but we didn't. And now we're here, and we're happy, and we're free. That's not luck. That's us refusing to give up." "Fair point," Paolo smiled. "So what do we do now?" Angel leaned into him, feeling more content than she'd ever thought possible. "Now? We live, we love, we build the life we want instead of the one we were given." That sounds perfect. And it was. Not because it was easy or simple or without scars, but because it was theirs. Built from ashes and choices and the stubborn refusal to let anyone else write their story. The contract that had bound them was long gone, burned to nothing and scattered on the wind. But the choice to stay, to love, to build a future together, that was something no one could take away. They'd started as strangers forced together by circumstance. They'd become partners in survival. And finally, they'd chosen to be exactly what they were now, two people who'd found each other in the darkest moment and decided to hold on. Some love stories started with flowers and romance and everything society said they should be. This one started with a contract, a coma, and attempted murder. But Angel wouldn't change a single moment of it, because every terrible, frightening, impossible thing they'd survived had led them here. To this lake, this sunset, this life they'd built from nothing. And that, Angel thought, was worth every signature, every risk, every moment of fear. Paolo squeezed her hand. "Ready to go home?" Angel looked at him. This man who'd woken up to find his life stolen and had chosen to rebuild it with her. This man who'd torn down his father's empire to protect her. This man who'd turned a forced marriage into something real and true and lasting. "Yeah," she said, standing and pulling him to his feet. "Let's go home." They walked back to the house together, hands linked, the last light of day fading behind them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments to navigate, but they'd face all of it the same way they'd faced